And this is tricky because you got two white guys talking about a situation that that we actually in real everyday life don't know much about, being two white guys. So obviously what happened, I don't need to recap this whole darn thing. Man was murdered in Minnesota several days ago by a police officer. Pretty telling video. Could look at it a lot of different angles, and that's one that did not lie, that particular video. Was taken into custody, I believe, 4 days later, charged with murder. Since that, originally peaceful protests were started. What has continued to happen are daylight peaceful protests for the most part. And what has basically happened is nighttime riots, destruction, I would say internal terrorism. So there's been a lot of discussion here. Here's where I'm going to start with this thing. And I wrote something about this the other day. I put on Instagram, put on Twitter, put on LinkedIn, whatever. Put on Facebook. Took a little crap from it. In my opinion, we're all being played. And I think we're being played big time. We're being played by the quote-unquote mainstream media. We're being played by social media for sure. We are out without a doubt being played by Twitter. We're being played by Facebook. We're being played by, in lesser case, I think, Instagram. But we are definitely being played by Facebook and Twitter. Definitely being played. With the free speech issue, the dramatic left-leaning decisions that are being made on our behalf, the narratives that mainstream media has pushed us in. You know, it's been obviously very interesting since what the horrible thing that happened, the horrible murder of George Floyd. What's happened is COVID's taken a completely big switch here over the last few days. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but did I write that figure down? Yesterday in the United States, there were 602 deaths to COVID-19. That got very little press.
No kidding?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
602.
No way.
Yeah. In Atlantic County, which consists of 271,000 people, COVID tally to date, 2,214 cases, 159 deaths, 0 deaths in the last 2 days.
No way.
In Atlantic County.
Get out.
Yep.
Yeah, you wouldn't know that.
No, you would not.
Oh, we could talk about that. We could expand on that further. I want to go all the way back. I want to start at the beginning because something I've seen on social media, and I think it's very important and it's very relevant, and everyone has a responsibility to think for themselves. So it's fine to sit here and blame the media and blame social media and blame this and blame that. We're all big boys and girls. We can all think for ourselves. We can all draw our own conclusions. We can all choose to post and comment and say and share the things that we want to. I'm trying not to get too emotional here today, but it's tough. As this is an emotional subject. I saw some absolutely amazing, beautiful things happen over the past few days. And I've seen some people try to share that stuff and try to get it out there. And I know it's hard. It's kind of like, and this is where the media starts with this stuff, where death, destruction, and violence are exciting and it gets ratings. And a lot of the other stuff, peace and love, is boring. That doesn't tend to get ratings, and it's unfortunate. But, I guess my point is to go all the way back. We are two white men sitting here talking about something that we don't know anything about. and I've always struggled with that, and I've done my best in the past few years of my life. You know, just to go back to who I am, I was raised in a 99% white community. I was fortunate in that I played a ton of sports, and I was the only white kid on my basketball team. I would say 90% of the time, until I started playing, you know, in Catholic leagues.
Yeah.
But even then, I'd go to the summer to play, you know, in the more competitive leagues.
Right.
And, you know, it'd still be against mainly black kids. And it was the only way I got better. But I was fortunate enough to form some good friendships and relationships. But still, it's nothing. It's no substitute for living someone else's life.
Right.
And then you start to get old and you start to hear some of the things. And as a white person, it absolutely blows your frickin' mind to hear some of the shit that happens. And it's just...
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing. It's impossible when you see stuff on social media of I don't see color. That one bothers me. I meant to talk about it when Troy was here with. This goes along with COVID, and I want to catch both of these things today. But like we're all in it together. We're not all in it together.
No. Something that's nice that does come out of this, though, you mentioned I don't see color. I think what's hard for white people, and it's been awesome to see minorities come out and kind of encourage the conversation and let us know, hey, it's okay. We can talk about this stuff now, because a lot of times we don't know what we're allowed to talk about. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to ask questions I'm not supposed to ask. And to hear, hey, we appreciate you just trying and making an effort to understand and ask these questions, that made me feel a little better of okay, well, how can I help on a micro level? Because at the end of the day, I think that's all any of us can do is help on a micro level.
Right.
You know, and I see a lot of people talking about that. You know, it's the worst comments I see are, it's too far gone. There's nothing we can do. It's too messed up. Everything's so effed up. There's nothing you could do. Okay, well, yeah, you're not going to go out there and overturn the government and police departments and reorder the whole thing. But, you know, you see some police officers taking the first step. And if you take the first step within your own family and raise your kids the right way and start there. Sorry. Bring kids into it and I get upset.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
You're right, though.
It's just hard. Like I said, you start talking to people that, you know, you love and respect, and you hear some of the things that they've gone through in their life, and it's impossible to relate, and it's just heartbreaking that that stuff goes on.
Well, I count, you know, Cliff, my neighbor, second house down, him and I had a pretty long conversation this morning based on me shutting up and listening. You know, I said, dude, teach me, because I'm without a clue here. And here's a very successful family living in a predominantly white neighborhood.
Right.
You know, well, we're pretty diverse, but it's there's not a bunch of people that look like them.
Right.
Amazing family. Has raised his kids like black, white, purple, doesn't matter. His kids are on point, man. I mean, they are like on point. Very successful, on and on. Then I had a conversation with Arthur Bush, our friend, you know, coming in.
Yeah, friend of mine for sure. Arthur and I have been talking a lot over the past couple of weeks as well.
Yeah. And I'm not sure I'm going to go into a lot of the conversations I had. I called your sister yesterday because, of course, your nephew, my grandson, is biracial.
Right.
And I wanted to check in on him and see, you know, how he was doing. You know,
sure.
It's like, want them to be careful there. And Erica, your sister, who, you know, we know her pretty well, and one of the things that she talked about yesterday was she was going to go to Akron today to
join the protest, right?
Join the protest, which as a father initially was like, oh shit, I don't want her to do that.
Yeah, it's scary. You don't want kids getting hurt. It's the
right.
worst thing that could happen.
However, then I thought, and then again, you reinforced it this morning, saying, Dad, this is like when you grew up. It was like Kent State, broad stroke all over again. It's like this is our opportunity to protest civil unrest, civil liberties, and that's true. It's happened. Unfortunately, and again, I blame it on the media and all of us buying into this crap, that there's other forces at work here.
Yeah, well, for me, I feel like it's common sense. Like I said, I can't. So I watched some of the videos from downtown Dover, Delaware yesterday, the speeches that were given in front of the State House. People marching through the streets peacefully, even when they went out to the highway and marched down the highway a little bit.
Right.
I refuse to believe these are the same human beings that are then breaking into stores.
They're not.
Cars.
You're exactly right.
I'm sorry. Just put two and two together, people. If you're watching we live in the ultimate age of information and videos. Watch the videos from the protests. Right. It's bullshit. It's not the same people that are.
That's right.
It's to sit here and say that the anger is proportionate to what black people and minorities have been through over the past hundreds of years is absolutely accurate when you're sitting here talking about protesting, and then to have those people be lumped into criminals that are doing whatever the hell they want as soon as the sun goes down.
Right.
There's just no way.
Right.
It's 95% not the same people.
Yeah, it absolutely is not. You watch a video of the other day, I think it was a National Guardsman got detached from his unit and was being surrounded by African Americans to protect him.
Right.
Right? Which was like very impactful to me.
Right.
Being a white person, right? I saw another video the other day, a line of white women standing in line, locking arms, protecting African Americans protesting behind them.
Right.
Very impactful to me.
Right.
I also saw a video the other day of an Antifa organizer handing out cash and ordering kids around on what to do.
Right.
Kids, 14-year-olds, kids being put in harm's way. Yeah. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I watched a video the other day of this young African-American gentleman, and they pointed out a big organized stack of bricks in Dallas on a pallet that were put there the night before. No construction site going on, nothing going on. These were planted there to be thrown to create chaos. It's just, it's insanity. I cannot understand as a society where even the far left, liberal leaning Democrats, in this case, cannot just open up their mind. The celebrities running their mouths about this stuff cannot open their minds up just the tiniest bit to come a little bit to center and say, let's have a discussion here. Why are we, I mean, we're attacking the president. Everything is his fault. He created the pandemic. He's killed 100,000 people. Now he's created this racial divide. He says some pretty wacky stuff. But racism has been going on since the early 1600s, since, since African Americans decided to vacation here in the United States. That's not what happened. They got brought here, and so it's not his fault. This has been going on for 400 years. This shit's got to stop, man. The problem is, in the conversation that I've been having with African Americans right now, friends of mine, is that they're all of the opinion that racism will never cease to exist.
If it happens on geological time. So, I've seen, it's funny to sit and talk about progress, and I'm sure that's the last thing that any African American wants to hear is progress. So I've seen people laugh at the comparisons. Everyone wants to talk about
Boston
peaceful.
Tea
We can
Party.
be peaceful, and so you make your comparisons and you talk back to Martin Luther King, and they say, well, that wasn't peaceful. Well, you look at the pictures and the videos from back then. Those protesters were just getting the crap kicked out of them all day long.
Right.
So
Water hoses, police dogs.
So how long ago was that? So
Right.
it took 50 years to get to the point that
Right.
we're not just beating the crap out of black people for speaking their minds in public. That's quote unquote progress. So they're probably right in that, who the hell knows how it will ever get to that point. And it's not all, I sit here and talk about all the nice stuff that I saw yesterday, and I've just, for my own sanity, have had to try and focus on the positive, but I couldn't help because I'm a sports guy, so it seeps into my timeline because I try to get distraction.
Me too.
And
Know where you're going.
transfer from Harvard University, black gentleman from Harvard University,
Unreal.
one of the top 50 basketball players in college basketball, transfers to Ohio State,
Yep.
has the balls to go to downtown to join protesters, is arrested. This isn't during the day. He's not looting. He's voicing his opinion as a citizen of our country and is arrested. And of course, real quick, he got turned around. So what happens if he's not a Harvard graduate? What happens if he's not an Ohio State basketball player? Is he still sitting in the jail?
Oh, no, he's got a knee on his neck, probably.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Right.
And so this isn't everyone. So that's part of the problem with all this stuff is everyone talks about it for a little bit, and white people talk about it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden we've moved on to the next fucking spin of the media cycle or whatever the next news cycle is,
Right,
and
man.
everyone forgets about it, and then we stop talking about
It's
it.
a fact.
So maybe it's uncomfortable. I've seen a lot of people say this is supposed to be uncomfortable, and it is supposed to be uncomfortable. And again, we're not talking about breaking into businesses. We're talking about awful, awful realities for our fellow human beings that are being overlooked. That shouldn't be something fun to talk about or comfortable, or it should be very inconvenient. It should be very uncomfortable. So, what's next? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I absolutely understand those conversations you're having with African Americans because I would love to be optimistic and say I feel like things are going to change, but I don't know that they will. And if they do, again, in my opinion, it's on geological time, meaning it's over hundreds of frickin' years. So I don't have an answer.
I agree. Arthur and I talked about today about about racism and it not changing, and we talked about violence. King said a lot of things. He was obviously very, very nonviolent, but he also said, I'm paraphrasing, that at some point the unheard voices need to be heard, and that can only be done through more violent measures. I mean, the fact is, everything that we, privileged white men, have achieved has been through terror, murder. We've taken, literally everything. We've taken our country from Native Americans.
Right.
We've taken we've literally taken everything.
Well, and even our country. I mean, you could just narrow it down to American.
And I don't want to bash white people. That's not my point here.
And I don't even think that it has to be limited just to white people. I think because our country is so unique and we've been founded on some pretty set in stone principles, and I think those comparisons in a lot of ways are relevant. That the Boston Tea Party was a massive destruction of property and a massive protest and a massive speaking out against the controls of that time.
Right.
So yeah, it wasn't race against race, but it was speaking out in protest against tyranny, and that's the foundation of our entire flipping country, man.
Right.
And you don't get to tell certain people you're not allowed to do this. It blew my mind when I started seeing the Colin Kaepernick stuff and those memes. I hate memes, but that's pretty straightforward, man. It's like, hey, don't protest that way. Don't protest this way. Yeah, it's like you start to think about the stink that people made over that, and it's like,
right, compared to this.
I mean, this isn't new stuff. I'll tell you. I talk about it a lot. One of my favorite comedy shows of all time is Dave Chappelle's "Killing 'Em Softly," and he's talking about police brutality against black people, and he pretends he's two white people, and he goes, "Mary, did you see this? Apparently, they've been beating Negroes like hotcakes for the past 50 years. It's in Time magazine." So it's like, this isn't anything new. And then he asks a white gentleman in the crowd, "So you've been pulled over before?" He's like, yeah. "So what? What'd the cop do?" He come up, he say, license, registration. Yeah. He goes, "Yeah, see, I was just guessing. I had that shit don't happen to us. I was just taking a guess." Because it's just not the same thing. And we don't have to sit here and talk about good cops and bad cops, because it's not even a conversation about that. It goes so much deeper than that. It's just a complete different life experience. And I guess, I don't know. I'm just speaking my mind, and it's not the proper perspective. I guess a good first step is just saying, I want to have empathy, but it's really impossible. We talk about empathy. I talk about emotional intelligence and two big themes in emotional intelligence.
And I think we're pretty aligned on that. I'd like to think that we're above average in terms of emotional intelligence.
Sure, and it's still a struggle.
Exactly.
I'm every time we talk about emotional intelligence, I say this is hard stuff. This isn't you study it, you learn it, and you master it.
No,
this is just stuff to kind of work towards.
Ongoing.
And I talked about cultural awareness on a live I did not too long ago. So that's part of one of the subsets of social awareness. Cultural awareness is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's just something you should continue to strive for. Ask questions, and if people start to gather on a micro level, again, a better understanding and appreciation of what other people's lives are like. Just lives. It doesn't have to be about big, awful, life-changing events within society.
Right.
Just get to know people. Period.
Well, in the conversations that I've had with some of the people that I've mentioned, I said, what about your children? What are you teaching your children? And a couple different answers because of their beliefs based in theology. But to prepare their children to walk out that front door as best they can, knowing what lies before them based on the color of their skin, something that we absolutely, positively cannot relate to. The one thing that is disturbing, there's a lot of things that are disturbing. The president the other day says, and this is one of his tweets that got, what are they calling it? What are they calling that? Fact-checked? Yes. Is the one where they start rioting, we start shooting, I think, is something like that.
Yeah.
It's obviously inciting comment to make. However, where does it stop? How much of the country has to burn? I think most intelligent people understand that it's not the protesters in vast numbers. It's not Black America in vast numbers. It's not white Americans arm in arm with their black brothers and sisters protesting. It is Antifa. It is the radical left agitating and taking advantage of the situation. Now, like and Troy said, plus the fact we've been locked up in our frickin' houses for 3.5 months, man.
Yeah, well,
you had all that shit together, and it wow, that's a recipe for disaster.
Talked about it before the show. It's just criminals. I mean, those are
Go
criminals.
there. Go further.
Just committing criminal acts. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, bad people.
When you start, so the up in flames is kind of a maybe the wrong words, because you see people burning certain things in effigy or whatever. That's always been a part of protest. But when you're talking about setting property, setting buildings on fire, stealing things,
different deal.
There's not. I'm sorry, there's not gray area there, people. It's a crime. A crime is a crime. It's just if you're willing to go out there and do those things, and you have that inside you to go out there and brutally beat somebody and take something that's not yours. That's just, you're a criminal. And trust me when I say that we don't want that in this country. You don't want that in this country. Nobody wants that in this country, because that'll end badly for everybody.
Yes.
There's no good that will come from a lot of people committing a lot of crimes all at once. So there's no win there for anyone. But I think what's unfortunate, and I have seen it on social media, and you can say it's driven by the media, but I was going to say we control social media, but in a lot of ways we don't.
Yeah, well, but we are social media right here.
Sure, I mean, so it is kind of shitty. I've seen a few people called out for sitting there and talking about destruction of property, but they let their mind get taken away from what's actually going on here. So they let their mind decide what the narrative was going to be for them.
Right.
You're free to talk about George Floyd and talk about injustice all you want.
Right.
You're choosing not to talk about that stuff right now.
That's exactly right. And I think being quiet right now, I've backed off until I had my thoughts formulated to the best of my ability before I wanted to sound off. But I think it's important to have a voice.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
And to express your voice. Jason Girdner just wrote in here, there's been a lot of people calling others racist and reaching out to their employers to try to get them in trouble. I think there was a post on his one of Jason's various posts that he does during the day about someone that was involved in one of his posts the other day. I hope I'm getting this right, Jason, that his employer someone turned him in to his employer and threatened his job and so on and so forth, which is bullshit.
Interesting.
Yeah, very. To be able to do. But the destruction, I think, has to stop. It's counterproductive from the
but
point
we talked about it. The people that are doing that don't care if it's counterproductive.
They're thieves.
I mean, I can't imagine anything more frustrating. I know George Floyd's family spoke out recently. His brother spoke out recently.
Right.
I can't think of anything that would be more awful. I mean, so you talk about 9/11, similar situation when there were people running scams during 9/11. Can you imagine losing a loved one during that, having to watch it unfold on a national stage, have it jammed in your face for, you still see it, you still have to hear about it, and then to have somebody go out there and tarnish the awful memory further by putting a negative, awful attachment to it of trying to scam people out of money or whatever, all this stuff that was going on after 9/11.
Yeah.
I can't imagine seeing that.
No.
And I'm not sitting here saying that again, everyone that protests during the day is going home and sitting on the couch at night, but I am saying the people that really care about what happened to George Floyd and what's been happening to black people in this country pretty much since they were brought here as slaves, that stuff isn't really part of the message and really is just causing more problems for all of us. I don't think it's what anybody wants to be the end game here. And there's a difference between making noise and being disorderly and and having your voice heard and just flat out committing crimes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think on a personal basis, and obviously you being my son, and we know each other well enough to know that a person that you come in contact with of color, that you would help him or her, like, without giving it a second thought.
Yeah, sure.
Just like you would whatever color they are, just because of the men that we are. And I would like to think that if that was paid forward by the overwhelming percentage of the population, that would affect some change. I'm also not naive enough to think that racism in some form or fashion will be here forever. See, the laws changed, but the enactment of those laws has never really changed.
Well, and it sounds strange. We talk about the butterfly effect a minute ago here with Troy. I think it starts on a micro level, and it's that guilty of being quiet. You know, I've seen a lot of black people post on social media that if you're not speaking up against somebody saying something or doing something that you know is wrong, you're just as bad. People talking about the cops that were standing there. Right. You could tackle that guy and knock him to the ground and smash his head a couple times, and then he's not doing anything.
Did you see the video of the I don't know where it was, but a cop with his knee on a guy's throat, and the other cop came over and, I mean, threw him off.
Sure.
Like, enough, dude.
So, it's, you know, I'm guilty of that on a much smaller scale. You know, frequently I hear things and see things that I should stand up for. I don't speak up as much as I should, and that's on me. And so if that's my takeaway from this, that I speak up more.
Right. Why do we do that? Why do you figure we do that? Is
it
something in our
thing.
DNA, the way we were both raised? What do you think?
I think it's a comfort thing, and it is a convenience thing. Then you do start talking about quote unquote white privilege, where it's just but it's a human nature thing too, where everyone just gets so locked into my world. Mm-hmm. I'm okay. Right. Well, that's not me. I don't say that. I don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants to go the extra step. I mean, nobody. So it's kind of what separates leaders from just average human beings too.
Right.
Where a leader, you know, in a business is going to, instead of just pointing out or thinking in their head, they suck at that. They're not doing it right. A leader's going to say, hey, let me help you. Let me show you. This isn't the right way to do this. Let me try and help you.
So important.
And even if it's a horrible human being that you know is going to say, F you, I don't care. I'm still going to keep doing it this way.
Right.
You still try.
Yeah.
And you say, look, what you just said is bullshit. You know?
Yeah.
That's how you feel. That's fine. You're not going to say it around me. You're not going to say it around my kids. I don't allow that around me and my family. That's not how we live our lives.
There you go.
How often does somebody want to be confrontational and come outside of their comfort zone and say things like that to people that maybe you thought differently of up until you heard that come out of their mouth?
Yeah, well, you don't want to.
No.
By nature, we don't.
No,
want
everyone
to
wants to avoid confrontation. So, again, it comes back to people talking about this isn't supposed to be a comfortable time. I mean, you said you had to pull me up here. I didn't want to talk about this today. I had no interest in coming up here and talking about this today. I'm pretty maxed out, and I don't want to take away from anyone else's. We're all having our own experience, but you know, you mentioned that we've all been cooped up for 3 months, and then to go right into stuff like this, and then you throw business into it.
Right.
But to add on to that, anyone who has small kids right now or has over the past few months, it's been a different experience from people that don't have small children. Yeah. And that's why when we started talking about, and it's hard, I'm avoiding talking about it because I will kind of lose it here.
Right. I
start thinking about what my kids just go through day to day, just because it's hard to be a kid. And then there's a lot going on. And then you talk about school shootings and everything else. And then to throw into that God damn it.
Let it rip.
You got to worry about leaving your house and getting killed by someone who's supposed to be looking out for you.
Right.
I don't know how you prepare your kid for that.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either.
I really don't as a parent.
Yeah. Well, the easy answer is you got to arm yourself, which is unfortunate. All right, so at this point, which is probably not the best point, I got to go take a piss really bad.
No, you're fine.
And then I want to get into dealer liability, and then we'll wrap this thing up. But it's